Hey, what's up, everybody? Gonna wait for some people to join up. Yeah. Say hey when you come on in. Got some heads coming in. I'm gonna wait about 2 or 3 minutes. I'll turn up the tunes in the meantime. I'm running like 15 minutes behind schedule at least, so it is what it is. Some Aphex Twin running. How's everybody doing out there in internet world? Mike Flex here, 7 Studios. Got a lot of work on my plate. I'm very happy for it. I hope that you guys are staying busy, happy, healthy, sane, and keeping yourselves, entertained in a way that helps you externalize this buildup of feeling that we all have inside. So right off the bat, I just want to introduce myself. I am a motion graphics generalist and just an overall techie music nerd, and I love all this stuff, but my obsession most recently, particularly with Blender, and my reason for doing this stream is the fact that it's open source, the fact that it's free cannot be understated. It's actually it's unprecedented, the level of power that you're given for absolutely no money whatsoever. So it's up to you, the individual, to get out of this what you need. Now, why would I need Blender might be your first question. Why would I use it? Including if you're just an illustrator, say, like, even if you just do painting or sculpting or something that's not even computer related whatsoever. At this point, our computers have become so powerful, that's also hard to overstate. The little phone you have in your hand has a quad or 8-core processor in it. It's absolutely madness. But so that means that the average laptop or desktop can really handle pumping this stuff out. And if you just go to blender.org and go download a version of this program and watch a couple tutorials, you might catch the bug that way. Separate of that, if you want to reach out to me and say, Mike, I still don't understand why I would use this program. It doesn't make any sense why I would do any type of digital production. It's not really going to help me. I'm sure I can convince you why it would. It's just a companion to what you already do. And the fact that the tool set is so big and getting bigger and bigger and bigger and easier and better to use, and the education's getting better, I'm just so absolutely hyped on this program. So that's why I'm doing the stream. Let's see how many people are up in here. 6. Hey everybody, say hey in the chat. Nice to see some heads in here. We got 7 heads. Cool. So blender.org, get over to the website and download it. So I want to discuss the creator of Blender and why Blender is free. This guy, Ton Rosendahl, is an absolute walking genius. We're very lucky to have him at this time on the planet. He is a Dutch software developer and film producer, as it says here on Wikipedia. And he, back in the day, created a ray tracer called Traces for Amiga. And then going forward, he created this kind of rough little program called Blender. Now, Blender has a big community around it because it's open source, and one of those guys in the community is this guy, Blender Guru, who has his own website, blenderguru.com. And when I say that this guy has endless tutorials, it's really true. All free, obviously. Go to blenderguru.com after you get blender.org and watch a bunch of these things. Watch them at double speed, skip through them, whatever. Just make sure that you pick up the little things about where things are in the interface, because playing around is really where the fun is at, and discovering, just like a music instrument, kind of discovering it in your own direction is fun. It's like a path and a challenge. So I highly suggest that. But so Blender Guru and Ton have a talk about which is really actually amazing because this, you know, like the guy who built an entire career around teaching people how to use Blender, it then has an interview with the guy who created the program, and it's really just this endearing video. So I'm actually going to turn down the music for a minute here, and we're going to listen to the two of these guys, and I just want you to hear Ton's heavy Dutch accent. It's absolutely incredibly hard to understand. I'll be honest, I listen really hard, and it can still be kind of hard to understand what he's saying, so subtitles are really useful. And he's so energetic and amazing, and the things that he talks about and the way that he talks about it. This is an hour and 46-minute talk here, but I'll put this link over in the chat right now. I really want you guys to watch this entire video. It'll change your mind about a lot of things. You know, when he basically describes how Blender became free, and it was to escape this like draconian licensing situation that he had going up that was basically going to kill the program, and bury the program, and by him putting it into this context of being free and open source literally forever, like by law, he removed it from the hands of bad actors that he didn't want to have it, or something along those lines. I could be mistranslating, but anyway, let's listen to this talk real quick. I'll shut up.
Community, as you know, they don't really listen to what you tell them to do. They have their own ideas. They want to, so they started working on things. I thought, what? That's not important. I'm going to work on that. You know what they did? They fixed the modeler. Because they wanted to model, they want to use the software to create things. And they were right. Of course that's important, right? And that's what you got if you got communities involved.
I think he's in a pretty
Okay, so I won't spend too much
now.
time on this on the video, because I want you guys to literally watch the whole thing. Every single person watching this should watch this full video. It's well worth your time, and it'll help you understand kind of a little bit about the modern culture, and also why people why Blender is so quirky. Now what do I mean by quirky? We're gonna hop over to Blender real quick. We're gonna hop over to the old version of Blender, right? So Blender 2.79. They made so many incredible things in-house, and other people around the world have made so many incredible things with Blender 2.79 and prior, but that entire existence of the timeline from 2.79 all the way back has so many really weird ways of working and paradigms that almost anyone that came from another program that tried to use Blender was like, what the F is happening right now? I can't use this program at all. Close it. No wonder it's free. Done. Never touch it again. That's honestly been why most people don't touch it now. Now, this is the funniest thing. Blender 2.8, which we're about to take a look at, came out in a full completed release recently, but has been in beta for like years. So the whole time that you've been able to use 2.79, they've had 2.8 beta being developed in the background, and everything about it was being changed, overhauled, added to. They added in a new rendering engine. They added in so many things that I literally can't rant on about it. It's not really that useful. But the bottom line is both programs have their own, you know, way of working, and ultimately it's the same thing. But the interface was very, very different in 2.79, and really the biggest gotcha for everyone was that you left click with your mouse to click on anything in a computer, right? Not in Blender. You had to right click on things to get it to do it, and there was no way to change that functionality. Maybe you could script it out. I don't remember. You could look that up. But bottom line is, if you couldn't learn how to work in the way that this very unique Dutch mind works, then you couldn't use the program. And luckily, you know, many of us that are generalists like myself use all of these programs, and it's really more of a fun puzzle and challenge to discover where all of those things are. Some programs are more convoluted than others. As an example, ZBrush is like maybe the most convoluted interface of all time, but anyone that's used it for like a decade like loves it, because you know where everything is and all these specific areas. But even then, I mean, all those programs are ready for, you know, an interface upgrade at this point. based on the other things that have come out. So we're going to step away from Blender 2.79, and I just want to show you guys real quick back on the web that Blender here, the Blender website, you can go, you know, to download the most current version, and that's great, but they constantly have the alpha and beta versions in the background that you can go and use. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see Go Experimental, download Blender Experimental. If you come down here, and this is right on their main page, you can download the 2.83 alpha. And you're like, well, why would I use that? Was it going to crash? It's going to break my computer? Like, no, like all it is that it might, the program might close out like more often, and you might not know why. You know, there might be more bugs present, but they're working on those, and they like you to use it, tell them when that happens, and they can go and fix it if you give a good bug report. So there's always new cool stuff, and by new cool stuff, I'm not even kidding that like some of the updates will add 3, 4, 5 different things that you're like, wait a minute, it's like these huge new shifts of technology that add all this new stuff. So they've added cloth, they've added fluid, they've added smoke and fire, and they merge in all these open source branches. So because Blender is open source, it uses you know, repositories like GitHub to kind of share the code, and everyone can go in and edit the code and add their own and add their own and add their own. So there's so many different extensions to the program that you can add in yourself, that is kind of where the secret sauce is for me in every single program across the world, because the interface is vanilla and it does what it needs to do, and very often has many bells and whistles to achieve the majority of things that you can imagine. But in actual production, in actual projects, there's always unique problems that come out that are just outside the limitations of programs, and plugins fill that purpose because they're a custom solution to a custom problem. And you know, that custom solution might be needed in other ways, and by releasing a plugin that you only really used for yourself, you could, you know, see it propagate. And that's what's really fun about the plugin world to me, is as you discover one, sometimes it breaks open the program in this whole new way. As an example, Cinema 4D is absolutely amazing, but Xparticles turns it into this whole new world of like full-on control of particles. And I mean, in 3ds Max now you have TyFlow, which, like, huge shout out to Tyson, who's like the super coder of the fucking century. But yeah, these little plugins are amazing. But anyway, we're not talking about paid programs, we're talking about free programs. Why? Because everybody is like, how am I going to make money? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And also, like, how do I be creative? How do I do all these cool animation things? So look at all these 3D movies that are on every day. Like, how do I make that? And like, it's not that hard. Like, I want to be 100% about that to anyone that's like, oh, well, I can do all the rest, but all that other shit seems hard. Like, it's literally not hard. It's as hard as, like, we had to learn how to write in cursive. We had to learn how to do all these convoluted things that, like, you wouldn't think to do for any reason. And like in this case, you literally get to a degree, and I know it can be scary to think in this way, you're like playing God. You have full control over morphing and forming entire worlds, or just individual objects, or abstract spaces in which you're just communicating feeling, or complete glitch where you're like deliberately destroying things in a way to make it like alternatively beautiful. I fucking love this stuff. Anyway, so let's get a little bit into actual Blender itself. I showed you where you can get the download itself. I showed you where you can go get the alpha, which has the newer cool stuff, which, like, I'll just show this for a second. This guy's a great presenter. I don't remember his name, but he's awesome. So now you can like sculpt cloth into things. And like this free program runs really fast on your computer and has all these functions that all these paid programs have. So what do you got to lose, right? So let's get into 2.8 and I'll show you some stuff. So this is a splash screen when you open the most recent version 2.82a. And it lets you say, you know, what kind of new file do I want to create? And honestly, like right when you open the program, like that can be a little confusing because they're giving you a ton of options. It's like, do you want to do this or this or this? And like, you can get to all that stuff later. I just want to like say, like, no matter which one you choose, it doesn't matter. It's not going to limit you. You can just choose something and do it. So just do general to start, because why not, you know? when you're in the interface, hopefully you're not just on a laptop with a trackpad, because it's absolutely crucial to have a mouse with a middle mouse scroll wheel. And in my case, I always use trackballs. It's like really 1,000 times better for your wrist, and means that you don't need a big space to move the thing around on, and for it to lose tracking and stuff. I think trackballs are absolutely the best thing in the world. But anyway, so the reason that middle click is so important is because if you just click the middle click on the mouse and then move the mouse around, you get kind of like a rotation of the screen. And if you use the modifier keys, which are Control or Alt or Shift, you can get variations. So if I'm holding Shift and I'm doing it, I can instead pan the camera. So I'm rotating with a normal middle click. When I hold Shift and middle click, it's moving around like so. And when I hold Control and middle click, I'm able to zoom in and out. So there's other ways to do those things, and a lot of those are over here on the screen, which you can hide and customize and everything. But so right off the bat, when you open up this program, there are so many buttons, and this is true of every single different program that you do this kind of work in. But ultimately, you don't need every single button. That's not what you need to worry about. You need to just basically slowly step up and find the basic things that allow you to do like literally basic things. And once you start with fundamentals, you can get into the more advanced stuff. And if you just follow along to some tutorials and try to copy exactly what they're doing and pause it and do it and go back to the video, and I mean, in my process of learning, there's plenty of videos that I watched 3-4 times and recreated multiple times, then from like trying to recreate it from memory until I got to the point where I was like, all right, I don't need to like watch tutorials anymore. I still learn quite a lot from like 𝕿𝖕𝖘 and guys like that, but at this point, it's really just opening these programs and using them. That's all you got to do. So when you open the default file, you've got a little scene with a cube in it, and you can see a grid, and you can move around on that. So over here on the right is like a layer tree that is like kind of like Photoshop layers a little bit, but it's kind of just like collections inside of collections. And as you open the little arrows that are next to them, which you can click on them and open them up, it shows you what's inside that little thing. Now they added in 2.8 these things called collections, which allows you to like kind of group things together, and then you can group things inside of groups and have different collections and have it, switch between them, all types of fun stuff. But really what I'm getting at is the layer structure is what contains everything that's in your scene, and by clicking on each one individually, you basically select it in the scene over here. And so one of the benefits to Blender, and one of the things that makes it kind of like stand out in the world of modeling and 3D and all that, all the programs have really good hotkeys, but Blender is like this, specifically Blender 2.79 and before, but still, it's kind of like a hotkey ninja program. And what I mean by that is like almost everything you can do in the program that like you would want to do in the process of making something in a 3D space, they've binded in some way to the keyboard. Now this is like what I mean by like the weird Dutch like logic thing that permeates Blender, is like you have to know their like Mortal Kombat like combos, like you have to know the series of button presses to do like an advanced like multi-step thing. But once you know that combo, you can literally fly. And I've seen people that are like really adept in Blender, like you're not even thinking anymore. It disappears. It's like a shorthand, and you're able to just make shapes. So once they added in the sculpting branch, once they merged in like these advanced tools that are the equivalent of ZBrush, once they created an additional real-time renderer in this program, which means like, so we're looking at a wireframe mode right now, right? And by going over here and clicking on these little spheres that are in the upper right, I have the ability to change like what style of rendering the computer is using. And the higher up you go, or there's 4 of these little spheres, the first one's not very taxing on your hardware whatsoever because it's drawing basic lines. The next one is, kind of taxing because it's basic shading. The next one begins to be truly taxing to a certain degree on your computer, and it takes a moment to load in because it's going to do like PBR real-time rendering like Unity would, or like a WebGL or something like that. And then you have this next step, which is a real-time renderer that they've coded specifically for Blender. And this is like breaking open my mind like on a daily basis. It's the coolest fucking thing. So it's a real-time PBR renderer that doesn't have all of the bells and whistles of the normal renderer, but the magic of Blender is that if you go over on the right here and you see that there's our list of stuff, directly below that there's this vertical list of tabs that have all these little icons, and the icons will eventually, you'll have no problem knowing what each one represents because they're very literal to what they're supposed to be. So if I go click on the camera, it's like looking at the back of a camera. You're like, what is that shape? It's called the render properties, and up at the top here there's a render engine, and I can click on it and I can change it between either, I don't know why I would use Workbench, I should look that up, but Cycles and Eevee are the two rendering engines in this. So Cycles is this amazing renderer that can do world-class rendering that you would be indistinguishable from Octane or Redshift or any of that. It's fucking sick, and I have it for Cinema 4D just because I did this huge project in Cycles in Cinema 4D for General Electric subcontract, and it came out looking super nice. It was the Subsea Connect thing. So Eevee is a real-time renderer. Cycles is a non-real-time renderer, which means it needs to like take time and kind of do that thing where it's called tiling, where it renders one block of the scene at a time, kind of in a spiral or however you configure it. And there's that way of rendering, but then there's also the way of progressive rendering where it starts super noisy and then slowly begins to be less noisy, much like Octane. And so you can design something really fast in Eevee and get a general look, and then you can go swap over to Cycles. And the problem is you have to retexture things and reconfigure the shaders, and the lighting systems work differently. That's very high level for a beginner's course. But the bottom line is you can just open this program, leave it on Eevee, do all your work, do all your rendering, and you might even not know the difference as long as you make sure that you get the sample counts good, which over here on the right, directly below the render engine, it says sampling. And this is where all the secret sauce for doing a render that doesn't have fireflies, all those little white dots, because there were like lights that weren't properly taken care of. You usually need to turn up your sample count in most cases, and now they're starting to integrate denoising into all these things. So I think Blender has at least one, if not two, denoising algorithms that you can use. To the point of that you could have a really intense scene with tons of shit going on and render out a noisy version of it, and then it would use like a computer algorithm after the fact to remove that noise at least a little bit. The problem is in animation, it can be very blotchy, and even in certain stills, it can be very blotchy. So denoising is something that you want to use like very tastefully, or it fucks it up. Basically, it comes down to computing power and GPU power. So if you have a desktop and you have a gaming card in it, you can do entire productions in this thing, or you can at least make something that's really cool that you can 3D print for yourself, or you can, mod something. And Blender has a game engine built in, video compositing, all this stuff that I'm not necessarily going to get into. But let's go a little deeper into the interface, and I'm going to go look at the chat real quick. I'm going to drink some water because I've been talking a lot, and let me know what questions you have, and if any specific things that you want to learn, and I'll be back in like 30 seconds. All right, I'm back. I got a cinnamon roll. Delicious. So, what we're looking at here is a real-time scene. Pause. Turn down my music. Cool. So how's everybody doing out there in Facebook world? Say hey. Say what's up in the chat. Gotta eat this cinnamon roll. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a really quickly procedurally generated shape that I then put into an array, and then I put a modifier on it. So I'm gonna jump into a new file and show you what's up with that. We've got an object, right? And over here on the right, we've got this upper panel of tabs that's separated with it's kind of hard, maybe hard to see because it's a little dark, but there's a spacer in between. And there's a lower set of tabs. What the lower set of tabs is for is adjusting parts of this thing that has the orange border around it right now. So all the stuff down here, if you just hover over anything in the program, it's going to pop up with a label. So don't get impatient, just hover over something and let it pop up. And what the bottom half has on it, the top one, excuse me, when you click on it, you're going to see all these little lists of things, and they all represent the object's properties. So all of this might be a little daunting and confusing when you first get into this, but just know that 90% or more of the work that you do in these programs, you never even look at or touch any of this stuff. So there's tons of stuff that's super daunting, and how am I ever going to learn it all? How will I ever get the time to learn it all? People are like, I'd love to learn this. It just, I don't know when I'll find the time. Like, dude, you don't need to learn every single button and word, and that's not the way it needs to go. So don't worry about comprehensively getting an introduction to everything. Just try to do some basic shit, use one or two tools, use those as much as you can, and slowly expand until you get into the, comfortable space with the other ones. So over here on the bottom list of tabs, what I wanted to basically display right away is that there are these things called modifiers, and this is very much like a 3ds Max way of thinking, and maybe there was legacy programs that had this first. But what a modifier does is it basically takes the object as you have it and it alters it in some way. It modifies it in some way. So a lot of those are classic style changes. What do I mean by that? Number one, you might want to take the object as it is and twist it. You might want to bend it. You might want to displace it with noise, which means that it would just become all bumpy. So those controls are done by a modifier, and you can stack modifiers. And the thing about modifiers, over until you apply them, they're procedural, and procedural way of working is kind of like this whole paradigm that I've kind of been really heavy on for almost 10 years now. And a lot of the work that I do stays procedural. But it's like baking down your tracks or bouncing down your tracks if you do music production. You basically remove the ability to change it with sliders and things like that and make it so you have to manually move the points. So I won't get into discussing the differences between vertexes and faces and edges, but those make up polygons, those make up objects in 3D space. And what a modifier does is just altering those in predefined ways. So if we click on the modifier over here, you'll see that they're in these vertical lists. One is called modify, one is called generate, one is called deform, one is called simulate. So those are all super exciting columns. There's so much fun shit in these 4 columns that, I mean, you by just combining these in various ways, you might not ever need to do anything else in the program if that's what you want to do. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean about you can learn the program from any direction you want. There's some people that might never ever use a modifier and might manually do everything in the program, or never use it for anything else but just sculpting. And if we go over into the sculpting branch, which I did that without explaining it, but up on the top here, there's all these different versions or modes that they've built in, and when you click on it, the whole interface changes to be a different workspace. And that's like having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different programs in one program. And ultimately a lot of the DCCs have all this stuff in it, so it's the same thing. They're all 10 programs in one program, and they all do things in a slightly different way. But Blender has this really clean way of sorting out the interfaces and just basically saying, oh, if you want to do some sculpting, click on this, and it's immediately going to remove all the clutter and give you a bunch of sculpting tools all over on the left. So if I click on it and I try to add some stuff, there's not a lot of subdivisions on this shape right now, so it's probably not going to move it in an exciting way. Yeah, see, so it's just moving the vertexes around. If I do that, you can see that all it's doing is just grabbing those points and pulling them out. So if I add more subdivisions to this shape with a modifier, then I'll be able to do that better. And I just click on the modifier stack, I go to subdivision surface, and by clicking on that, now here we are. And if I was to apply it, now this shape has just a few more on it, right? So you can obviously apply a lot more subdivisions, and I won't go into sculpting right now. I'm going to do an entire separate video on that. But in the layout here with the modifiers, you can create what's called an array. And an array is like a cloner that takes the object that you have and it makes a bunch of copies of it. So if I just go into generate array up here at the top, there we go. And it's got a count of 2. So now that I've added that, I should at least a little bit get into this because I'm not getting deep. I'm going to have a whole series about this on my Patreon. Hey, how are you, Lenny? What's up, dude? So when you add a modifier, it's going to have a bunch of subsettings, and everything in the program has subsettings, and those subsettings have subsettings, and a lot of that stuff is really crucial to getting things to do what you want them to do. So whenever you get to a new list that includes a bunch of lists that have lists inside them, like stop and go use the internet, and I'm just gonna show you guys how I use the internet, because why not just like show and tell. And if I didn't know how to do this, I do array modifier blender, right? And it's immediately gonna pop up the full description. And if I don't feel like reading, which you should, because in most cases the documentation that's written is a little more like comprehensive. Maybe not as easy to understand because it's not someone explaining it to you, but usually there's little tidbits when someone explains something to you that they gloss over that the text does not. So you can either go read about it, or you can watch a tutorial about it. And luckily, the internet and is propagated for so long, and Blender is propagated for so long, that there's going to be 20 tutorials on any one thing that you want to learn. And if you really want to become a super user, you are like me and you'll watch every single fucking one, because why, like what else most people are like, oh, I watched The Office for like the 3rd time all the way through. Like, are you kidding me? Fucking watch Blender tutorials and then become a human being that can add to society. So I'm sorry to get all ragey about that, but I really think that everybody should flex their mind with Blender and play around with it and try and create shit for other people. And just as an offshoot of that, there's so many objects out there in the world, and when you go to make something in 3D, you're like, oh man, well I need I want a bottle in the scene, so now I need a bottle. And then you're like, well fuck, do I make it? And that's really hard. Well, let's see if somebody else made it. So you go and you look to see if somebody else made it, and there's a ton of bottles out there, and some are very expensive and some are free, and all the free ones and cheap ones look like absolute dog shit, and then the really expensive ones are still not exactly what you want. So what's the answer there? The answer is that you need to know how to do this, and you need to help add to this growing community of people that contribute to sharing assets. And in the world of free and open source, that's where shit really gets cool. So we're going to break away real quick from the just talking about Blender to talk about resources. So when you're making stuff, you're like, okay, well, there's a cube. What do I do with that cube? You can do all types of shit with that cube, but the bottom line is most 3D stuff, you're not working with a cube. You're working with a character. You're working with an object, and it's like, well, where do I get those objects? I don't want to have to make them all. And the answer is you do not have to make them all. There are so many other people out there making them that if you really want to get into that, please do. It's absolutely awesome. But if you don't feel bad about getting out there, looking at the stuff that's available and using it. So let's look at where we can get some textures, where we can get some high-res sky lighting textures, because the difference between a good render and a bad render is usually HDR and global illumination. And you can Google those terms. Oh, I have to turn this down, don't I? Yeah, I do. Okay, there we go. Yeah, but Google those terms. Distracted myself with the annoying Aphex Twin for a moment. I'm playing the soundtrack to my stream for the next couple weeks is just going to be this massive collection of the Aphex Twin unreleased SoundCloud dump that he did that was thousands of songs. It's it's absolutely absurd how much music this dude has produced and how good 90% of it is. A bunch of it comes on randomly. I'm like, turn it off, turn it down. But most of it is yo, this groove is really grooving. So anyway, I want to talk about resources. Here we are. So we're going to step into Blender add-ons. So what is an add-on? An add-on is a plugin, which if you're familiar with Photoshop plugins or something like that, or a VST plugin in Ableton, they're just a custom-made extension that does a very specific thing. And optimally, in the best cases, they work with other extensions as well, or with everything else that's already in the program. That's always awesome. So Blender add-ons, blender-addons.org. I'm going to put all these links in the description or the chat after the fact. But blender-addons.org is a great place to go and look around to see what's available. Some of them are going to be pay. People make pay add-ons for Blender that are absolutely amazing. I guess I should show a couple of those. Let's see. So blendermarket.com is another really, really great place. But as an example, so there's all these different things on here in Blender Market. And so you can come to Blender Market to get just about anything you can imagine. And I really do mean that. It's not even an exaggeration. So just by browsing through here, you're going to find a million things. I'll share in the coming streams that I do, my favorite ones and why I like them. And my Patreon's going to have tons and tons of this stuff. So again, I'll share that link in the description as well after the stream is done. So picking up paid plugins for Blender is well worth it to support these developers that are contributing these really powerful tools that can do some crazy shit. So I use quite a lot of them, and Blender can be a little quirky about add-ons. I'm over in the 2.79. So if you go into File, Edit, Preferences, take a moment to pop that open. There's the add-ons tab. It'll start up with interface. So there's tons of ways to customize Blender. And if you go and click on add-ons, it already comes with I don't even know. Let's see, community. It already comes with probably close to 100 built-in plugins that are not enabled when you open the program for the first time. So that's super weird, right? Again, that Dutch logic that's this does I don't necessarily understand why every single time I install Blender, I have to go in and enable all of the things about it that I want it to have, which honestly clutter up the interface like crazy, but I do fine with that visual clutter, and I like having all the tools on hand and not have to go open the preferences, add the add-on, then disable it when I'm done. It's I just want them all on all the time. So anyway, if you go into File, Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, you can look through here and you can add a bunch of built-in ones that extend Blender and make it do a lot of really powerful things, including work well with other programs and a bunch of features that you're well, why isn't that in the program? So they've been really kind to bundle so many plugins, and the reason I say kind is because someone like myself is constantly installing and upgrading and all that, and spending all my time reinstalling plugins is like not just something I don't want to do. So please keep bundling all the cool ones, and I will keep using them. So again, I'll go through a big list of these on my Patreon as to why they're useful and why I enable which ones that I do. So back to where we were looking. So the first stop for your shot to look nice is to have a nice environment on it. And if I go to the Eevee renderer, I'm just going to drop like a floor in here on these things. I'm not necessarily going to. Just going to be like, give me this chair. Give me a chair. All right. It's taking a moment to load up, but I'm getting myself a chair. So not every program has this kind of thing, and again, this is why Blender is so powerful for free. Is like the Blender Kit is a repository where you can just browse through. You have to pay for the pro version of it. This is the free version of it. You can just add up a pre-modeled, pre-textured, ready-to-go object that looks really, really nice. So in the meantime, while that's loading, I'm going to go to my light, settings, and I want to have a dome light. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, what I need to do is go to my environment. So there's an environment tab for every scene, and that is this little red world here. And if I click on the world properties and say use nodes, it means that I can go over here and click this little, every one of these panels that we have on the screen here, which can all be split off and separated and all that, they have this little left icon. If I click on that, you can change what this little subscreen is. So I'm going to change over to my shader editor, which lets me alter textures with what's called nodes. So I'm saying use nodes, and I'm going to click on this second little icon here, which is right now currently just editing the shader of whatever object is selected. It's not showing us anything in the window because I'm only selecting a light which has no texture on it. It wouldn't have a texture. If I wanted to see something in there, I could click on the chair, and usually you would see something there, but this is called a linked library, which means it's an external file that is not currently in the scene. It's just like being referenced, and so I can't see the shader in here unless I was to break it apart. Not to get too deep into it, but if I go to the world over here, we've got these nodes for the world, and if I go to add on the upper left here, and I go to texture, and I go to environment texture, and I just drop this in here, plug it in from this yellow dot over to this yellow dot. I won't explain too much of what's going on here because, again, there's going to be plenty on my Patreon. There's a million tutorials about this stuff. I just want to whip through it. So it's all pink. Oh, my God. That's not what I wanted, right? Oh, what the heck happened to my... Oh, I ruined myself just now. I'm like... I need to reconfigure this this little baby here. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you're the best. Okay. So pink screen. What the hell is going on? Is it broken? Like bottom line is it's trying to show us a amount of light in the scene, and there's no picture that's being added to this environment texture over here. So if you go and you click open on it, you can add a HDR, right? Let's add one of these free HDRs. And so what is an HDR? If you don't know what that is, it is a 360-degree image that has extra bit depth in it to contain extra light information, which is used, like when we look at a picture, we can only see one amount of light on it. HDR can store the different levels of brightness and darkness in it. So if you were to brighten it up, it wouldn't blow out, and if you were to darken it, it wouldn't blow out. All that data is in there for it to be able to go in both directions. So you can get them, you can make them yourself, you can get them from a lot of places, but there's this fantastic thing that I have to show you, which I've talked about in previous streams, and that is hdrihaven.com. 100% free. All HDRIs are licensed as CC0 and can be downloaded instantly. This website is amazing, and he's got his Patreon, so go support that as well. And every single time that he reaches these are all the people that have supported him. But every time he reaches a threshold of pay or whatever, he's been just releasing stuff. So there's just there's so much really, really good stuff. There's textures too as well on here. But you say, oh, okay, like Studio. So what also makes this website fantastic is that all these little spheres are showing you what an object, what a diffuse white sphere would do, what a glossy blue sphere would do, what a glass sphere would do, and what a chrome reflective sphere would do in that scene. So it gives you an idea of how it's going to light your object. And if you just take a look at what's on offer here, I mean, this is incredible. This is the equivalent of having an actual studio lighting setup, and you can just go get this for free, download it in whatever size you want, which is absurd. Don't worry about using the 16K. That's absolutely absurd. You'll be fine with the 4 or the 8K, at least for now in technology. And if you don't have a really good video card, this adds into your GPU and what it's processing. If you're using these 3D programs and you're loading up a bunch of textures, it's going to use that much or more of your GPU RAM to be able to run it in real time. So back to Blender, I'm going to load up one of these scenes just so we can get some lighting. And because there's no floor, I should probably put a floor in. Let's see, add plane to get a floor in here, add mesh plane. And I'll size it up. And I'm going to need to move this chair. Yeah, there we go. So what am I doing here is getting crazy. That's what I'm doing. I'm not really zoomed in enough way. That would be nice for it. Let's see. Chair, why are you so small, chair? I don't appreciate it. So the hotkey ninja situation, I still don't have a key capturer. If you guys know a good free or cheap plugin that can do that, so I can show what buttons I'm pressing. And basically, I'm just using G to, I'm right-clicking on the object to select it. I'm tapping G. I'm moving it around like I want. If you want to refine it to a single axis, you can just tap Z, Y, or X, and it will just move along that one thing. And if you want to move it along the other two, but not the one, then you press Shift and the one you don't want, and then you can just move anything around. So because of the real-time renderer is on, this gives you a really good idea of how well the lighting works. Let me move this light around. So that's pretty cool, right? And it looks pretty good, but if you get all the other stuff around it good to go, and you start turning on a bunch of the more I guess I could say advanced settings in the renderer engine, you can get it to look even better. So let's scale that baby up. All right, and then let's go into so every one of these sub scenes that or sub windows, I'm sorry, not scenes, that we're in has, and if you hover over it and you tap the letter N, it jumps this little mini arrow that's over here out, and it's a whole drawer. So all these have this tiny little gray arrow over here, and you might be like, what's that gray arrow? If you tap the letter N, again, you have to know this stuff already, or like have a Blender intro to know this stuff. You tap N, and it comes up with this big list, which my list of tabs here is massive because I have, like I said, every plugin enabled, but I don't have problem getting all through that. Let's go to boop, and then we'll say again, good luck finding like this level of speed in any other program in terms of just like getting stuff in, moving it around, load it up. There's a lot of configuration required to get even like a basic scene good to go. Hello, are you gonna do your thing? Oh, there we go. Oop, I'm gonna need to tile that. So I'm not great with materials in Blender, but let's see what we can do. Oop. It's the way it's being currently applied to the map that needs to get like remapped to have less. But so it looks like it's a really miniature chair, and that's hilarious. Let's just make it a bigger chair. And because this is this real-time engine, again, you can see that I'm able to like kind of like really quickly move around, really quickly get the idea of what I want, and then I can go over to the render engine and I can just swap it over to cycles, and hopefully everything will stay in there. Change it over to GPU because I have very powerful GPUs in this computer. Give it a second to load up the textures into the GPU. And let me just get rid of extra shit around the screen. And then you can also resize these windows really quickly. Boop, boop. So I won't spend too much time in cycles because it obviously, takes longer to resolve. But you can see that you can start your work and get your composition good to go in the other setup, which you can still be doing in cycles. You can just be doing it all, say, in this mode or whatever, or even the basic clay render mode. You can do all your layout, get everything composed the way you like, and then hop over and let it do its thing. And you can crank up the samples again to get the fireflies to go away. But it's pretty sick, and it's really not hard to achieve like borderline like photorealism. So if I wanted to add some plants in here and all that, again, that's not hard. And I'll show like a quick building of a bunch of scenes. I'll release like a 5-minute quick scene on my YouTube a little bit later. Again, if you guys have any specific questions, just let me know. We're gonna hop over into Eevee again because Cycles is much slower. Gotta let it load up the texture because I guess it is loaded up. And so over here in the render engine, you have all these settings, and frankly, by default, you got to kind of go through and turn on quite a bit of them. Bloom always needs to get backed off because it's like way too intense, but a little bit is realistic. You got depth of field, you got subsurface scattering, screen space, reflections. That's really important because I don't know if you can see that down here, but there, the entire chair is now reflecting in the ground, and it's using some extra computing power to do that, but it makes all the difference in the renders and the photorealism of stuff. If you're going for stylized, then it doesn't matter, but there's that. There's also a Blender Guru video that you should really watch about like filmic Blender and why that's important. But just like with everything else in Blender, it's like hidden where that stuff is. They put it in really weird areas. It's all the way down here in color management, and you gotta turn it on. And let's see. So I also want to show the vector over here, I guess. Let's see, add. I needed like a transform node. I think it's called a mapping node. There it is. Yeah. So I'm over here in the world shader editor, and I added a mapping node which has a vector output that I can plug into the actual image that's in there. And if I say texture, I think, vector, normal, it's not working like I wanted to, unfortunately. I just need to transform it. Okay, that was fail. That was a fail. Don't pay attention to me, anybody. That was really wrong. Anyway, so what else do I have on the docket? Let me see. I got a little mini script over here. Oh yeah. So we showed how to get an HDRI. That's cool. I didn't really show necessarily how to get all the other stuff. So, you know, Blender Kit's pretty cool, but it's also pretty limiting, and it's going to be all the same stuff in there. So the repository of public models and textures is getting bigger and bigger by the day. So let's go check out some of the best ones that are free. There's this one called cc0textures.com, just like the hdrihaven.com. And this has hundreds of detailed PBR materials with displacement, normal, and roughness maps in resolutions of up to 8K for photorealistic rendering. There's no need to log in, buy credit points, or pick a license. All assets are free without any restrictions. So, like, let's just be like 100% about this. Blender, 100% free forever. HDRI, Haven, all 100% free. No sign up. CC0 Textures, all 100% free. No sign up. Like, are you starting to piece together in your head what's going on here? Let's go look at the models that they have here. We got some bread. Nice. I got to get that bread. I literally got to get that bread. For Bready Boy. So we got 4 rocks, 2 apples, 3 pieces of bread. Cool. Not a lot of stuff. And by the way, this is done with photogrammetry. So I want to show you guys a free open source visual SFM. Free open source photogrammetry visual structure from motion. It's like, this website looks like it's from like 1992, right? Who cares? This thing is so powerful, it's absurd. So you can take a bunch of pictures of something all around it, up and down and everywhere, in a very, you know, deliberate pattern, which you can look up the best pattern to do and how to best light your object and everything. But this is for what's called photogrammetry, which is you take a bunch of pictures of something, the computer processes all of those photos and triangulates all of the pixels until it slowly forms a 3D model of the thing that you took a picture of. And there's a bunch of steps in between that require cleanup, and I'm also going to show off this one. No. So MeshLab is pretty much necessary because anytime you do photogrammetry, it's going to have like problems with the geometry. And what this has is just like 50 filters that are different kinds of algorithms that help remove the different kinds of artifacts that are introduced in the process of photogrammetry and laser capturing and all these different ways that you can kind of look at an object and turn it into what we, you know, vertexes and points in 3D space. So Visual FM will generate a 3D model, then you bring it into MeshLab and clean it up and export it with textures and all that, and then you're able to bring it into Blender, and you can, you know, the next step is like, okay, well, if I start getting good at like making this stuff, like how do I get it out there? How do I share it? So Sketchfab is this amazing website, and there's a bunch of websites. There's also this one called TurboSquid, 3D models for professionals. So this is mostly just a repository for paid models. There's a bunch of free ones as well, so it's a great place to go and look, but most of the free ones are like terrible, like really bad. So over here in Sketchfab, again, this is a huge repository, so that there's popular. Let's just go to popular Sketchfab, right? So not everything on Sketchfab is downloadable or purchasable, but you can make something and you can show it off. You can sell it if you want to, and you can make it free and downloadable if you want to. So the reason that everything looks so good on Sketchfab is because it's using what's called PBR, physically based rendering, and it's like this specific paradigm of making materials and textures and lighting that is really interoperable with any everything else that's using the same setup. So what that means is you can make something in a PBR engine in Cinema or Eevee, and the way it looks to you right there, like the exact way it looks, you can upload it and it'll look exactly that way in a PBR renderer like Sketchfab. So you can make some seriously sick art, and then you can upload it to Sketchfab and people can view it on their web browser or their phone or whatever in real time. And like the level of quality, oh my God, I've never even seen this one. Holy shit. I haven't seen like half of these, so we're gonna look at a couple of them real quick. These are their picks too, so like every one of these is going to be absolutely amazing. This is downloadable, like that's amazing. We're just going to look at a couple of them. Coronavirus! Somebody's selling it. Jesus Christ. Oh, that is fucked. That's fucked up. Anyway, so this is a 3D scene of Nazca, the Valley of the Wind, and it's so sharp and it looks so nice. It's just like, I mean, oh my God, this person crushed it. Holy crap. Follow. So Sketchfab is a fantastic repository, and it's an amazing place to go to get inspiration, to be like, oh my God, like I want to try to make that, because the ones that are not downloadable, like sometimes you're like, oh my God, like I gotta have it, or I gotta know how they did that, and like it just brings you into the program to start messing around. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna create something that's different than what you like expected to or intended to, and you're gonna learn a bunch of stuff along the way. So Sketchfab is great to come and get models to play with and break apart and take individual elements from and remix and you name it, but pay really close attention to attribution licenses and what the terms of you being able to use it are, because a lot of people release it for like private use, but you can't use it in a commercial project. So keep an eye on that and don't go using other people's work in your stuff. So let's see what else we got. That's cute. I'm liking the anime stuff. It's adorable. It looks like a drawing. It literally looks like a 2D drawing, like no matter what angle you put it at. It's so great. So this is somebody's photogrammetry scan. Let's load it up. That's hilarious. They like went to a junkyard and just like took a picture of a wall of cars. That's so sick. Oh my God, I'm downloading that. Whoa. They added it to augmented reality format, USDZ. That's new. Save that to my 3D objects. Nice. That is sick. Yeah, so like here's a farm truck. Free raw scan. Sometimes it's like a really well done 3D model, right? But like photogrammetry is amazing. So we're looking real quick at Sketchfab to see other photogrammetry that people have made. And in the case that we can download it, I mean, yeah, you can go get that and then delete out the extra stuff. If it was viewed from far enough away, it literally would not even matter. Like, so you can use that stuff in your scene. And like After Effects has like basic support for this stuff, but if you go and get Element 3D, you can load up these kinds of objects in Element and put them in your After Effects compositions and stuff. So there's that. But we're not talking about any of that paid crap. We're trying to keep it free because everybody's got thinned budgets and you know, wondering what we're doing with life here. So let's look at one or two more just because I want to. This is a Shinjuku building photogrammetry. Oh yeah, that's good. Oh, that's so amazing. Is this downloadable? 25 bucks. That's so worth it. Sick. But yeah, soon this will be ubiquitous, 3D scanning of the world, and eventually we'll have like not like a complete map of the world in 3D, but I mean eventually, like not even kidding, eventually we will definitely have a 3D map of the entire world. And the new iPad Pro that they just announced has LiDAR built into it, so I am buying that MFR. That is awesome. That means that you can literally like walk around your house and 3D scan the entirety of it, like high res, high detail, and then you can, you know, use that. So worked with a couple devices that do that, like the Matterport, but now it's like your device at home can do it. Your phone can do it right now.
1 p.m.
If you just take a bunch of pictures of stuff, load it into this free program called Visual SFM, bring it into MeshLab and clean it up, and then you're good to go. So yeah, you can even upload animated work. So if you animate something, you can export it in a format that Sketchfab, works with. And you can also download animated stuff as well. So by doing what's called kit bashing, which is taking a bunch of other things and putting them together, I mean, I would venture to say 75% of CGI is just combining of assets and not generating original things, just combining things in an original way, or deconstructing them in an original way. So that's pretty much it for this stream. I'm gonna take a break. It's been a fun hour or so, I think, or maybe it was longer. I don't know. How long was that? An hour, yeah, just over an hour. So get over to blender.org, download the stable 2.8 version, 2.82a, and if you wanna use the newest stuff right away, and you are familiar with Blender enough to do that, then go get the alpha version and play around with that. I'm still using 2.82 and having no problems with it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure you join the Flex Your Mind group. I have a Gumroad with a couple basic offerings right now. The Patreon will be launching within the next week. And thank you so much for your support. I appreciate any PayPal donations, Venmo donations, keeping things going. And I will keep sharing fun info with you guys. And I'm happy to introduce you to the ways of creation and hopefully inspire you to enter a whole new world of creativity for yourself. Self-expression is everything, and I feel that right now we're kind of at a loss, and we're going to run out of stuff to watch on Netflix, and we're going to, these feelings are bottling up, and how do you communicate them? You add to the dialogue in society. And you can do that with a pen and paper. You can do that with a computer. And I really do feel like empowering yourself to learn these things. It'll teach you more about math. It'll teach you more about kind of physics and the makeup of the universe around us, the fundamentals of what makes a texture what it is, the fundamentals of what separates one material from another. You can't help but learn that stuff when you're just playing around in these programs. So thank you guys again. I am Mike Flex, 7 Studios. Peace. I appreciate you. Stay healthy.